Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Monday as we take a look at Tropical Storm Franklin as it continues to get better organized, and it has strengthened overnight and this morning. You can see the classic structure of a tropical storm is there. You have this large area of thunderstorms that continues to expand both on the east and on the west side, which is the more important in this case because of the fact that there was some westerly shear that was holding it back yesterday with an upper air low that was sitting here, but that upper air low was forecast to dissipate, and indeed it did, and that has allowed conditions to become favorable for continued development and strengthening, and it does have time before it makes landfall in the on the Yucatan Peninsula sometime tonight. And then it's going to come out on the other side in the Gulf of Mexico, where I think it has a shot of becoming a hurricane before it makes landfall again on the Mexican coast. So we're going to take a look at the wider view so you can see perspective here. So here we have Franklin. We still have this tropical wave out in the eastern Atlantic that continues to track very slowly to the west. We have this area of convection, and that's associated with the large upper air storm. Let me just get to the water vapor imagery. The large upper air storm that is actually been migrating to the west. So you can see Franklin is here, and here's the tropical wave. We're going to watch to see what happens with this upper low with respect to this wave. I don't think development is going to happen. You can see there's still a lot of dry air to the north and northeast of this system, but conditions are still theoretically conducive for development here. But eventually, if this upper low is still out here, it's going to run into these strong winds in the upper atmosphere, and that is not going to be healthy for it. In the meantime, you can see how in the water vapor imagery, how the thunderstorm, the moisture field is expanding with this. As it continues to draw that rich tropical moisture northward, and it's entraining it into its circulation, and again tracking out to the west-northwest. So when we look at the track model guidance with this, you can see how tightly clustered it is. They all move it inland, actually just north of the northernmost border of Belize into the Yucatan Peninsula, comes out the other side, and then takes a turn more toward the west or even west-southwest on some models, but they're still fairly tightly clustered. None of them take it up toward Texas or anywhere else. It's a straight westward path into Mexico, and then actually the remnants cross Mexico and move out on the other side in south of Baja California. So it'll be interesting to see how strong it gets when it gets in the southwest Gulf. Conditions are going to be favorable for development. The water temperatures there are very warm. So I think it has a shot of becoming a hurricane. It's going to be moving, at a slow but steady clip. So it'll have 24 to 36 hours, I think, to do that. And after that, of course, once it moves inland, it's going to be a done deal. So we'll keep you up to date as we move along with all this. And here's the Hurricane Center's forecast track, which basically divides the guidance in the middle. Even though they keep it as a tropical storm all the way through, it's likely to weaken to a depression when it's inland and then strengthen again. And they do acknowledge that even though in their official forecast they don't have this as a hurricane, they certainly acknowledge the fact that the possibility is there that this could become a hurricane before it goes inland along the Mexican coast. Again, no threat to any of the shorelines in the Gulf of Mexico in the United States. Now, let's move to the weather that's going on here in the Northeast, because we have a wave of low pressure that's moving northeastward and heading for northern Virginia and eventually off the South Jersey coast and to the northeast. This is going to create overrunning rain north and west of the low track. So, if we're talking about a low tracking like this, we're going to see probably some 1 to possibly 2-inch rainfalls to the north and west of the track. And then to the south of it, there'll be a small area where there's a risk of severe weather. And that is reflected today in the storm predictions centers. Well, let me get back to the overview. I was accidentally hit the mouse there, but they actually shrunk the slight risk area further south down, taking it out of touching southern New Jersey, and the marginal risks, they just moved it a hair further south. So this probably acknowledges the fact that the surface low is perhaps tracking slightly further south than what was indicated earlier. And we're going to take a look at some of the model guidance with this on tropicaltidbits.com. You can get all the storm information you need on tropicaltidbits.com and just click on current storms, and you can get to see every storm that's running around in the world. Okay, and right now we just have what's left of Typhoon Noru. We have Tropical Storm Franklin, and we have that system out in the Atlantic, which, by the way, when we look at the track model guidance with this real fast, you can see what it does with it. You know, it continues to take it pretty much west-northwest to east of the Bahamas. But, you know, if it's going to run into this massive upper low that's in this position here north of the islands, all you're going to have are just clouds going by and maybe a remnant little low that might be there. And chances are it probably won't be. But let's move on to the weather models, and we'll show you on the GFS model. So that rain is moving in. There's your developing low. It takes it off the New Jersey coast near Atlantic City this evening, and then touching Montauk tonight, and then northeast from there. And then after that, high pressure and dry air build in pretty much through Thursday and even into early Friday. But you start to get into some rain later Friday into Friday night as the next weather system. And it looks, you know, like another one of these situations, again, where there'll be a bit of an onshore flow that gets established with a low that the model indicates up near Lake Erie. You've got a high that's sitting up in New England. So that is going to make for an onshore flow. So somebody's going to get into the warm sector and somebody is not. And those people that are not in the warm sector are going to be sitting in clouds and rain and temperatures in the 60s. And then that moves out, and then you have for for Sunday, you have another low and cold front approaching with the chance for some showers and storms. So, you know, there's a pretty active pattern here, and there's a nice cool high that comes down behind it. And that's going to gradually push into the northeast. So we've got some another shot of dry air for the beginning of the week of August 14th. And again, high pressure to the north, stalled front to the south. So, you know, it goes on and on. And the models continue to at least try to late in the period to maybe have some ridging off the east coast. So let's take a look at that to see if there's some real credence to this. And I will I like to use we'll start with for a change, you know what, we'll start with the tighter view. So here's our upper trough that's swinging through for today. You know, it's a nice little short wave that's moving by. It's progressive, so everything moves along. Look how far, you know, this is unusual for this time of year. You've got westerly winds in the upper layers of the atmosphere all the way down to almost to northern Florida. So that's, you know, that's a little unusual. And here's your next trough for the end of the week. You can see it right here, swinging up and around. It's swinging up and around to our west, where the bulk of the energy goes. And then another arm comes through for Sunday, Monday, and you still, in this case, the upper low just kind of sits there in eastern Canada. So you continue to bring and funnel down some cooler than average air into that week of the 14th. And then gradually that trough does lift out. But when we look at this on the wider view, in terms of the overall jet stream pattern at the end of the period, it's still, let's see, here's the difference. Again, we keep running into this model trying to bring the ridge in the east. It did it for a few runs. Now we come back to, again, this idea, you know, the ridge in the west is still there now at the end of the period. You know, still a little bit of troughing here in the east. There might be room for a warm-up, but the Pacific jet is pretty strong, so it wouldn't surprise me. Well, two things wouldn't surprise me. One is that this doesn't wind up looking this way, and that we get yet another system coming down in the northern part of the jet. Why don't we just look real fast to see if the models do anything, if the GFS does anything in the tropics. And we'll go to the tropical region here. All right, so back we go. So here's our low, the tropical wave, and then Franklin right there. So you can see the GFS track of Franklin. In the meantime, the tropical low just really doesn't do anything. There's another tropical wave right out here. At this point now, we're into Thursday afternoon, so Franklin has already moved inland and in Mexico, probably near or south of Tampico. And does the GFS spin up anything in the long range? It doesn't seem to be. We do have waves moving across, but it really doesn't do very much with them. Has one at the end of the period here, south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands. And now we're talking about August 22nd, 23rd on this map. And let's take a quick check at last night's European, which I'm going to bet really doesn't do very much either. And there's Franklin on the European, which it brings inland. And actually, I think probably does strengthen it into a minimal hurricane. You do have waves coming off the African coast, but they are not spun up by the European model. And why don't we just go to the where we can see the sea level pressure. I'm just kind of curious as to what it does, how deep it gets Franklin here. It takes it down to, when it's still got some time before moving inland, it's got it to a 991. So I think it does have a possibility here of becoming a hurricane, or at the very least, a strong tropical storm. All right, folks, I'm going to leave you here at this point. You can check out latest website posts on meteorologist joecioffi.com and Long Island weather on weatherlongisland.com, Angry Ben on nycweathernow.com. For those of you on Facebook, have a great day. We will talk to you later on today. I'll probably do another live stream tonight as the rain is going on. All right, folks, I'm here. Good morning to you. You should be able to hear me. Just somebody give me a shout out to make sure. I would appreciate it. Excellent. Thank you, Delvin. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. First off, with respect to the system here coming through into the northeast, the track of the surface low is going to be a little bit further to the south, not by a whole lot, but just enough. And we're going to see some rain. It's struggling to get in here at the moment as we go through the rest of mid-morning because of the fact that the air is relatively dry, but eventually it will saturate. And I'm thinking north and west of the low track, there'll be a 1 to 2 inch rainfall. South of the low track, where severe thunderstorms could get involved, there could be a 2 to 3 inch rainfall out of this. That to me makes the most sense with what we are seeing happening. Now, with respect to Tropical Storm Franklin, we are going to probably see this gain strength a bit more before this is all said and done. Would not be at all surprised. And top winds might even get up to about 60 miles an hour or so, or before it moves inland into the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it's going to do this track right across and come out the other side. So it's going to spend about 24 hours over land. It'll probably weaken to a depression, go back to a tropical storm after that, and then maybe strengthen. It has time to strengthen to perhaps a minimal hurricane before it moves inland again on the Mexican coast near or south of Tampico. I haven't looked at the specific geography about where that landfall could be. But with respect to the other weather system in the tropics, known as 99L, as Pandaz just asked about, there's just way too much shear in the Atlantic again. And, this tropical wave from the very beginning has been having issues. It's elongated northeast-southwest, and that's usually a problem. Systems like that do not develop very fast. And the fact that we do have strong upper air winds that developed in areas north and west of where the tropical wave is, but it's going to eventually have to challenge that. So I can see why the models don't spin it up. And by the way, I want to say again, when you start to see these weather models in the long term spinning all sorts of hurricanes up, you better be very careful in buying into them, because we just in this case here, the GFS would have had a major hurricane right now in moving westward, and it's nothing. Okay, it's a big nothing. You have to be very suspect of where models spin up tropical systems in the long range and where they track them, because they're just not going to be statistically reliable. Some of you have been asking about the chances for severe weather in the interior Northeast and up into northern New England. Could you get severe weather as we go forward through the month of August? Sure. But, as these cooler air masses start to penetrate down, you're going to have to develop that difference in air masses between warm and cold air. So if the trough is in the east, you may just be too deep into the cool air. This situation today, for example, with low pressure tracking south of most of New Jersey, is going to mean that the severe weather risk is going to be from southern New Jersey southward, almost like you might see in the spring, rather than you would see in the middle of the summer. But such is the upper air pattern that we have. And, the thunderstorms this time of year become more and more big rain producers than they do straight line wind or tornadic, unless you get some kind of cyclone that's developing, some kind of tropical cyclone perhaps, or perhaps a non-tropical cyclone with a good southeast inflow coming in from the Atlantic, where you wind up with a solid warm sector coming up. So could you get severe weather? Of course. Will you see severe weather going forward in the next couple of weeks? I'm sure you will. Is it going to start to get, the odds are going to start to get longer and longer for it to happen? Absolutely. All right, Pandas, like long range questions regarding the winter, and I've said this a few times, and I'm going to say it again. I have a very tough time getting my head around the long range forecasting. It's extremely difficult to do. It's very technical, and it's an awful lot to wrap your head around. And I'm not there with it. And I'm not actually, to be honest, beyond the short mid-range period, I'm not really all that interested in trying to figure out what the weather's going to be 2 or 3 months from now, or for the next coming season. I find from a short range and mid range perspective, I find it's better to look at what's happening in front of you and not worry about things down the road. I can't get wrapped up in something a month from now or 2 months from now when I've got all this going on. There's only so much time in the day. You're either going to focus on the short range or the long range, unless this is all you do 24/7. And it's not all I do 24/7. So I'm not going to really get into long range and how the winter. We'll make observations about what the upper pattern is like, certainly. And I've been saying all along, at least as far as the next several weeks are concerned, that the trough in the east, ridge in the west is persistent, and that is going to start to bring down more robust, cooler air masses from the north. And our periods of dry weather with low humidity are going to be longer, and our periods of very warm to hot weather and humidity, which haven't really been that long, may wind up being shorter. And pretty soon, 90-degree days may start to get long in the tooth if we don't have a ridge developing in the eastern part of the U.S. And by the way, I'm not answering this to, being mean or anything, or, you haven't, gelled up any anger in me. This is just, I know that not everybody is on these videos every day at the same time. So you may, I'm going to have to say this a few times until it kind of circulates throughout the entire audience. Yeah, Delvin, blocks in the Atlantic this time of year are kind of tough to figure sometimes, because If you get strong blocking up that way, it can often have in the summertime in the east the opposite result of what you might think. That being said, the display, it does displace the westerlies further south. That brings the jet stream, further south, and in a situation where we've already seen it be south of normal. So we'll see what kind of impact it has. Sometimes you get that blocking in the high latitudes can wake up the tropics to some degree, but there's a lot of other things still going on in the tropics that we'll have to see whether they change. We'll be talking about that strong upper low that continues to sit out in the Atlantic. Of course, the issue of dust from the Sahara, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see where it goes. Fallen Angel, this year much cooler than last year. I had my AC on for a month straight. This year I had it off for 9 days last week and turned it off 2 days ago. Wallet, thanks to the weather. Absolutely. Well, I look back at some of the statistics, at least around the New York City area last summer. June and July were not. They were fairly close to normal. It was August last summer that really got hot and humid. It geared up late last summer in terms of getting the 90-degree temperatures underway, and August wound up being, I think, close to 4 degrees above average. Okay, so that's where the difference was in last summer overall. So far for this area, for New York, I'm just talking specifically about New York City, because if you look at the numbers, they are actually running a little bit above average in terms of temperature for both June and July. June slightly above, July slightly above, to some places a couple of degrees above. At least for the area where I cover, which is New York City, Long Island, northeastern New Jersey, and then you kind of expand out from there. The departures from normal have been a bit less. So we'll see where it's going to take us for August, because so far, looking at what I'm looking at, we're going to see temperatures being on the whole below average for the first part of the month anyway. Pandas, yes, I like to fish. It's a really relaxing way, even though it's a very frustrating way of relaxing. It requires a lot of patience, but it's, in my view, at least the way I'm doing it, it's cheaper than golf, and I'm not into golf, and I just really enjoy being outside in the quiet. I particularly like to fish rivers. In fact, I'm going to be fishing upstate New York at the end of September, which I'm really looking forward to. And I will be doing live streams from up there, okay, up near Lake Ontario. So we'll mix it up just a little bit. I still haven't found the Delvin. I have not had a chance to look for that track map, but I will find it. And when I do, I promise you, I will put it up in the live stream. Okay. But for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, someone put down all the model forecast tracks of Matthew and of Hurricane Matthew from last year, and it was really interesting because you had a chunk of tracks taking it well offshore, a chunk of tracks that took it into the southeast and rather into Florida west into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, and there was this huge gap where it showed nothing. And in the gap area was where the model wound up taking it, which I thought was really interesting and certainly a good indicator of how off the models can be in the long range. Blast off. I don't like this winter weather already. Well, we haven't had. We're not. I get. Are you referring to people asking about it, or are you referring to the fact that the summer for a lot of places has been not a continuous heat and humidity type of summer? And by the way, all numbers count in terms of the day-to-day statistics. But if you for June and July, if you take out the heat wave days in New York City, the 4 days in July that it got to 90, which you really can't do, and the same for June, the months average near or a little bit below average, but the numbers skewed the averages up higher enough to take them above, and really the vast majority of days of the month were spent close to average or a little bit below. So it was those few hot days that kind of boosted the numbers up a little bit. And I think that's why there's this perception in a lot of places down my way that it's been a rather cool summer because of the fact that more days have been reasonable. There have only been a few hot and humid days. So that's how most people are measuring it, and not necessarily by the statistics. Trough in the east, minus 30 wind chills, Alberta Clipper 3 times a week. Nice. All right, Pandez. Soon enough, it's August now. Before you know it, it'll be November, and we'll be doing winter weather and getting away from all this tropical stuff. So anyhow, let's gonna have to end it right here, folks. I got a few things to do. Tonight I'll be at the Connecticut Library on Long Island. If you happen to be watching from Long Island, come on out at 7 o'clock. We'll be talking more about tropical storms. In fact, we'll be talking about Franklin right there and taking all your questions. Raymond, I ranted about airport temperatures, especially New England 100. Yeah, you know what? Especially when you have a thermometer on a runway and LaGuardia, which not only you have jets blasting their engines into the thermometer, and long-term construction and huge amounts of traffic. So those numbers to me are just skewed way out of proportion. Once upon a time there was a time where LaGuardia and Kennedy. I'm sorry, LaGuardia and Newark temperatures used to come in near or under what the Central Park temperature was, and then it kind of reversed, and it was sort of like a degree or two warmer most of the time. But now we see these anomalies where it's like 4 or 5 degrees warmer, and I'm a lot of the urban areas have changed here to a large degree. Both industry, which is no longer here, and new buildings and so on. So there's been a vast change in the urbanization landscape. That does have some impact in terms of the heat island effects and so on. So I guess it's not a surprise to see these numbers, kind of change their character over time. But and when you're 6 degrees, when New York City Central Park is 94 for a high, and 5 or 6 air miles away or less, you have LaGuardia at 101, and that's a bit much for me to accept. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I have this library talk tonight. I'm going to schedule another live stream tonight for about 10 p.m. Hopefully, I'll be back in time to do that. I may push it back to more like 10:30 just to be safe. And we'll update everything that's going on. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And we will see you later. Check out, I'll have website posts up on meteorologistjoecioffi.com, Angry Ben on nycweathernow.com. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later, 10:30 tonight, roughly. And I'll schedule the live stream so you'll be able to see it on my channel.